pass and the world is saved. That's all he wrote. Of course, we should pray. But what is triggering them about that? I think I know. I think it's the term a spell. Yeah, a spell, because a spell implies some sort of witchcraft or magic is at work. And the timing of this tweet really is something, because I have had it on my heart and on my mind all weekend to find the right words to convey to my audience that what is going on in this world is literally and exactly that. People that practice occult magic are in this moment pushing
What's
for
up,
World
Deb?
War
What's
III.
up, Josh?
And I think that's hard for a lot of people to process, because we grow up and we learn that there are in effect really three major monotheistic religions in the West. So the idea that
I just
actually
figured I'd
there are
get
people that are
Candace's
in
opinion
charge
on
of Western
everything.
governments that are in essence
Hey,
really
the Dan.
pagan and could be making literal blood sacrifices to various demons, that kind of evades us. It evades our understanding of the world, because we look at Hollywood, we look at culture. Hollywood in particular has been ever intentional
Hey, now, if she'd have said that 4 or 5 years ago, people would look at her crazy. But after that Epstein list, it kind of changes things, don't it?
in assisting sort of the implausibility of such a narrative, right? Movies, books that are published, if they delve into the topic of witchcraft and spell casting, it's reserved really for the category of fantasy, right? It's fantasy if they're discussing it, or it's being mocked, Hocus Pocus, or Harry Potter, really. What sort of crazy person would believe that ancient pagan practices are still happening in the real world? Okay, maybe
Every
in some
Halloween.
remote third world village in Africa, but in the developed Western world, at
Every
the tippity
Halloween.
top of government, you would be mad to even suggest it, even when it's actually in our faces. Take, for example, this recent Paris fashion show collection from a brand known as Materier Fecal. Just so you know, that translates to fecal matter. Wow, must have really been an inspired show. Fecal matter. Wow, no, so in your face, but don't you take it the next step further and think that, these people could be into some dark stuff. That would make you, again, a crazy person. What about
What's
the
up, John?
much celebrated visual artist to the stars, the Serbian one? She's also an artist to the politicians. She does spirit cooking. Literally, that was what was in those emails. Marina Abramovic. She puts on performances in front of the most powerful people in the world. Performances like in 1974, when she sought to,
What's up,
quote,
InfoWars?
re-evoke the energy of extreme bodily pain using a large
Ha!
petroleum drenched
Nah, I don't
pentagram,
eat
which
anchovies,
the
Joe.
artist lit on fire at the start of the performance. Standing outside of the pentagram, um,
I
Abramovic
heard
cut her
Gobble eats
nails, her
anchovies
toenails,
every
and
night.
her hair. When she
Ow,
finished
ow,
with each, she
ow.
threw the clippings into the flames, creating a burst of light each time, burning the pentagram, representing a physical and mental purification. Oh, that's just art, guys. That's just art. Don't you think a step further? No, come on, that's just art. And on the matter of science, even when it's in our faces, like when the world's leading nuclear physicists are caught cloaked before a statue of Shiva, stabbing a woman in an occult ceremony for CERN, well, you guys, that's just science. That right there that you are looking at on your screens was science, the best science, the best that science has to offer, the most ingenious people. And indeed, I would agree that it's modern science. In fact, the entire thrust of what was deemed the scientific revolution, a move away from the natural order of things and towards empiricism, rationality, that
Right.
began because of a long
Hey,
organized
like I said in Rusty's comments the other night, if that shit works with her, it's got to be good. That's all I can say.
Masonic effort to remove humanity from our innate spiritual understanding.
Motherfucker got
Okay. They wanted you to know that
pH
you can now
balance strips for
ignore
the
your
swimming
God given
pool, man.
instincts. You can set
Like, what
aside
the fuck?
your subconscious, that subconscious that comes online and lets you know that something is not right. Yeah, you can just set that aside and trust the experts instead. In fact, the experts constantly reinforce to us that our subconscious is wrong or it's just weird. And in some cases, it's immoral, it's devilish even. You wanna go see your grandmother while she's dying in the middle of COVID?
That's
What are you,
nasty.
Satan? You're being guided by Satan. If you don't listen to Dr. Fauci, that's who you're being guided by, because there's no greater source of authority in their world than the government,
Yeah, I thought
which
that
they
was kind
control.
of
That's
weird
the
when that dude
idea.
was up there trying to tell everybody.
And I promise you on everything, like on everything, that when Savannah, my manager, came down the stairs and delivered the news that Charlie had been shot, I went into my husband's office and I cried and I immediately said to him, he was betrayed. Charlie was betrayed. And my husband said back to me, "You don't know that. We don't know anything yet." And I said, "I know." Now, empirically, that argument fails. I get it. But no one can explain why or how I had the sense of dread in the very week leading up to Charlie's assassination. No one can offer why I knew that there was danger coming specifically to a school and why I felt that it was related to bees, why the feeling was so overwhelming that I hired extra security and took my podcast off air and pulled my children out of school. I had never experienced a dread like that in my life, ever. No one also can explain or even offer an explanation as to how exactly it is that Charlie knew he was going to die young and that his death would specifically be related to Turning Point USA. He said he knew from the
Well,
moment he signed on the dotted line that he was going to die young. What exactly is the expert explanation for that deep internal knowing that he had that has now been proven correct?
that's a 50-50
I'll tell you, there isn't
chance,
one.
though.
There isn't one. What Charlie sensed was obviously right. And the moment that Charlie was shot, I knew what happened to him was not random.
When you're
Okay.
in
He
the
was betrayed.
business
Charlie
that
Kirk
they're in,
was
that's
the
not
first casualty
it's
of
not
the war in
far-fetched,
Iran.
especially
I'm
with the
certain of
media
that. And
these
it's
days.
deeper than that. I am now of the opinion that he was likely sacrificed. And I want to tell you why I got there. You guys know, if you're part of my book club, I've been doing a lot of research into Freemasonry. About a month ago, while we took a break to prepare for our Bride of Charlie series, someone sent me this. I'm showing you, this is what they sent me in the mail. Something that is known as a Freemason Bible. Now, I knew that these existed because of my studying Sigmund Freud and looking into the fact that he had
Well, that's a big
inherited
old
one
Bible
from
then.
his father. The backstory of this one in particular came with a handwritten letter, is that a 33rd degree Freemason out in Oklahoma died, and all of his belongings were left in a home that was eventually auctioned off. And the person who had this in his possession, his relative was the person who acquired the home. And they went in and they burned everything in it effectively, thinking that it was obviously just carrying bad spirits. But he, for some reason, had the sense that he should keep this one item. For no particular reason, he kept it in the back of his truck for over a decade. And when he saw me
Yeah, that's
covering the
kinda what I
history of
think too, bro.
Freemasonry and
I kinda
what they
think the
believe,
same
trying to
thing.
discern what it is that they believe, he felt that this was the reason that he had kept it all those years. So he just sent it to me to provide me further insight into what they believe and what they practice
Hey,
at the top of Freemasonry. This is not your granddad
'cause let's be honest, if they wanna get you, it doesn't matter where you're at.
Freemason Lodge, okay?
They gonna get
No,
you.
my dad was a lodge. It was just a no, this is not that. That is not what 33rd degree Freemasonry is. So I flipped through this immediately after we did douse it in holy water. I flipped through it. And within the very first
Mm.
pages, there was a pentagram
Yeah, a lot
with
of people
various
hate her too,
illustrations
sooner
inside
history,
of
because they
it,
think that she's
notes
just
around it.
freaking
I'm going to show
crazy.
you that
You'd
now.
be
We just took a picture
surprised how
for it
many
for you to see
people
it.
I've talked to, just like in the real world, in my real world, I should say, that think Candace is just off her rocker. I'm like, "No, not so much, man. I don't know if everything she says is spot on, but there's a lot of it that makes sense."
There at the bottom. And in case you can't see what is pointing to the middle, it says place of sacrifice or worship. Okay. Place of sacrifice or worship in the middle there.
Now,
So
back
I
in the
want you to
old
note that in
days,
this
I know they
Freemason
used
Bible, it
to
illustrates that
sacrifice a
a
lot of animals
sacrifice
and stuff.
must be
Do
made.
you know over in, the Middle East, some of y'all probably do know this, but, like, they'll kill goats. I shouldn't say that word, but they'll sacrifice goats, and it's gotta be pointed a certain direction. It's gotta be a certain time of the day, or it's no good to them.
in the center of a pentagon. That's a
My
pentagon.
brother sells
5
goats,
sides,
and he had a couple
like a
of
house.
people come out there, and he's like,
And I thought, how
never again,
curious that Charlie
never
was
again.
indeed seated in the center
Had to be
of a
done with a
pentagon
certain knife,
when he was
and
killed.
it was weird. It made him
Let me
very
demonstrate that for
uncomfortable.
you. You can see that right there. Again, it was my independent study into Sigmund Freud that led me to learning about B'nai B'rith, the Jewish Freemason group, whom I believe have been running
Yeah,
our
center
country since
history.
at least
Before
the
you
Civil
couldn't have
War.
told me that,
I've
though.
done my best to consume and learn about what it is that they believe, what they
I'd
practice.
have been like, come
This
on,
is
man, you
occult
reaching.
mysticism.
You just
Okay.
making shit up.
The
Not no
satanic
more.
panic that
Sad
happened
world, too,
was
man.
real. Children are being harmed. They have been harmed in occult ceremonies for a very long time. This is an ancient practice. And this is not to be confused with Judaism in any way. In fact, they rely on you confusing it. In no shape or form does this have anything to do with any
Yeah,
of the
who in their
monotheistic
who in their right mind believes that it's okay to marry a 9-year-old girl? Like, what the fuck are you talking about?
religions. Okay. Judaism is merely a
Well,
mask
see, you only know what you're
that these
taught. You
pagan
know what I mean?
occultists wear, just like
And you grow up
Christianity
thinking that
is one of
that's
the masks
okay.
that they wear. The Star of David, as they term it, is in fact an occult symbol meant to represent
What's up,
King
Nickel D?
Solomon's ring. There is no way that you can avoid this. There's no way that they can try to rewrite history. It is quite literally known as the Seal of Solomon. I'm going to show you this. This is on Wikipedia. This is that accessible. We can read parts of this together. It reads, "It is often depicted in the shape of either a hexagram or a pentagram. In mystic Jewish lore, the ring is variously
Wasn't that
described
a
as having
Chinese
been
checker
given
game pattern?
to Solomon, having given Solomon, the power to command the supernatural. Due to the proverbial wisdom of Solomon, it came to be seen as an amulet or a talisman or a symbol or character in medieval magic and Renaissance magic, occultism, alchemy. Ladies and gentlemen, this is literal witchcraft. We cannot beat these people and we cannot win if we refuse to even recognize what it is that we are up against. We have to recognize what it is and who it is that we are up against. And again, it has nothing to do with Christianity. It's got nothing to do with Judaism. That is why, as is further stipulated on this Wikipedia page, the Seal of Solomon was once featured on the flag of Nigeria and the flag of Morocco. Those are not known to be Jewish countries. Freemasons worship Solomon as the master architect. They believe that he gave them the keys to build and therefore
Tex, my
control
brother said it was
societies.
real,
This is
real
how you
creepy,
build. This is
man,
how you
and
build a
he
matrix
quit
in effect,
selling.
right?
He actually quit selling goats to the public over it. He only does it at auctions now, and he loses a little money by doing that, right? Because we all know at cattle auctions you don't get full price for them. But he said he wasn't having that shit at his place, and he just got an eerie feeling, man.
That is the reason why Aleister Crowley
He said it just didn't seem
was
right.
a
Something was
master,
wrong
was
with
a
it.
cultist, created an entire religion around this, put together a series of books, a series of pentacles that are meant to summon various spirits. I want you to hear me when I say that. They are intentionally summoning demons. First book he wrote was called The Book of Evil Spirits. Wow, look at that Star of David all over it. What do you mean this is not associated with Judaism? It's associated with Baal worship. I cannot stress this enough. That is what those in power practice. It is what they believe. It is ancient, it is occult, and it is magic. I believe that the manner of Charlie's death was also intended to cast a spell. That's the only thing I kept asking the question, why did they broadcast this? Making us watch Charlie die was diabolical. And although this priest that I'm about to show you is discussing Satanism more broadly, he's not saying this, to be clear, in the context of Charlie Kirk.
I mean, I
want you to take a listen to what he says. This is Father Ripperger.
If you really
He is
get
going
down
to
to the
describe
brass
the
tacks of it,
nature of this
this
sort of
place does not mean
constant
all that.
symbolism that's being used, this obsession
This
with
place was
them
built on
almost
Christianity,
having to
and the
reveal to
disgrace
us
that
what
they're
they're doing, like
doing to
wanting
it
to get close
is
to
a
revealing
shame
to us
to our
what they're doing
forefathers
and then
that died
gaslighting
for this
us.
place.
Take a listen.
That's a fact.
Actually, the technical term that we tend to use for that is called the revealing of the method. I
May
don't know
not
if
be
you've
the
ever heard that.
smartest or the
Basically,
sharpest tool in the shed,
it
but I can
basically
see what you're
means
doing is
that
not right.
it can be connected to a curse. They could curse this so that it has a more so that its distribution becomes more extensive and more people watch the thing. But a lot of times, what that is that the thing about Satanists, and also even though it's occult and the fact that it's hidden, there's a side to diabolic psychology that even when they remain
And what's up
hidden,
with the
they
priest around
still
a
want
bunch
to
of
show
bottles of liquor?
themselves in
That
some
I
way.
mean,
They
there's a
still
bottle
want,
of
they're
liquor
going to
next to
reveal
the priest on
themselves
the stand.
in
What the
something.
fuck
They
is
can't
going on
help
here?
it. And it's the same thing you see. It's the same thing you see with Satanists. It's the same thing you see with Freemasons when they're involved in certain things. It's the same stuff you see across the board in these particular groups. And so they just tend to reveal stuff. But their hope is to, even in the revealing, that you don't
Or
know.
when?
There's a sadistic delight they get out of
Yeah, I don't
basically putting it to you without you even knowing it.
think we are either. You know?
Yes, that is accurate. It is diabolical, and they are clearly sadistic in what they are doing. And of course, there is an element of it they enjoy to gaslight you right after they do these sorts of things. That piece, by the way, about the symbolism, sort of overt and in your face, is also made clear in the very early pages of this quote unquote Freemason Bible. That symbolism is actually crucial. In fact, it's a science to them. You're not imagining things. Right here
Hey, I
at the
wonder
top,
if
it states
that's what
this.
all these
Again,
and this may
from
be
this quote
far-fetched.
unquote
Somebody stop me if they think I'm wrong, but I wonder if that's what the alignment of like all these pyramids and stuff was. I don't know if anybody's ever mapped it out to see. I'm sure they probably have. I know that they fall on these ley lines, but I wonder if that's a symbol for something like that.
Freemason Bible. It reads, "It has been correctly stated that symbolism constitutes the very essence of Freemasonry. Freemasonry is essentially the science of symbolism." Further down, it offers us a section entitled "The Science of Symbolism Explained." It reads, "A symbol or an emblem is an occult representation of something unknown or concealed by a sign or a thing that is known." So something you recognize kind of carrying deeper meaning.
Mm.
And it gives us some examples. Incredibly, you wouldn't believe me if I didn't show it to you. It gives the example of a square. A square is in Freemasonry an emblem or a symbol of morality. A plumb line, the symbol of rectitude, and the beehive as a symbol of industry. Yes, they do communicate to one another using symbols, as I have maintained from the very beginning, by the way. Kash Patel continually stressing 33 hours was not random. It did not feel subtle. It seemed to me and to many others that was some sort of signaling. 33, 33, everyone was just saying 33 all the time. So to the routinely gaslit public, I would like to validate your every instinct, most especially about the subsequent behavior of Turning Point USA as an organization, behavior that looked to us as though it was diabolical. There was apparently, sadly for them, not enough empiricism, rationality, or spellcasting in the universe to override our sense that something was and is deeply wrong. Deeply. Okay? Deeply wrong. What did they give us? The horrific murder of a man, followed by the joyful coronation of his wife, who is now inviting his enemies onto the very ship that he built? Spiritual ick is what we felt. Okay? Words have meaning. They sent out their broadcasters, effectively, to cast something more broadly to the public. What they cast was, she's a grieving widow. That's what Charlie would have wanted. 6 feet social distancing. To what end, though? To what end? I believe it's pretty obvious now.
She's definitely a
There was an
fighter.
ultimate goal of raising Erica's political profile as a potential presidential candidate down the line. Actually, that was explicitly and almost immediately seeded by her dear friend, And part-time homosexual deviant Tyler Boyer, who she can't remember how she met, take a listen to what he said a mere 12 days after Charlie's assassination.
Do you see politics in her future down the road?
Yeah, it's funny. I had conversations with Charlie about that. So he was like, "Man, Erica could be so much bigger and better than me at almost everything." We laugh all the time about it because people were like, Charlie was going to be president someday. He believed firmly that Erica was going to be president someday.
Your business is crushing it, but unless they've got the right help desk software.
Oh man, I think it's just.
Well, there it is again. Them telling us the private
Hey, Mama.
conversations were the exact opposite of everything that Charlie was saying publicly. Women, get married, have children, have lots of children, stay home. That's more important. In the days leading up, Erica said she stayed back because Charlie said home needs you. That's why she didn't go to the September 10th event. They were just on a tour. Charlie was just every day telling people that family's the most important thing. But privately, when he sat down with Tyler Boyer, he was like, Erica's going to be president. That's what I want for my wife. I want her to be president and to be also the CEO and chairman in the event of my death. And, he wasn't the only one, because you got to go backward to really realize how deranged everything was. Here is Frank Turek on October 7th, just 3 weeks following Charlie's assassination. Take a listen.
I used to say to him, the ticket in 2028 is going to be Vance Kirk. And I said, I don't know if you want to take it because I don't think you're going to have the same effect as the president of Turning Point USA. But you know what? Between you and me and our listeners, I'm not giving up on the Vance Kirk ticket.
Well, it's very exciting right there. But
I think Erica would be an amazing president someday.
That, my friends, would be an example of a Father Ripplinger described diabolical psychology. Like, oh, Charlie was going to be the president, but you know what? It was Vance Kirk is what we were hoping for. But now he's gone. I just realized we don't have to let go of that hope because there's still a Kirk and there's still a President Vance. That could be really beautiful and exciting. Could be what Charlie wanted in the end. And of course, here is the very and always excited Mikey McCoy echoing that sentiment. Take a listen.
He left behind these blueprints for her. And
for you.
Yeah, there you go.
And for you, Mikey.
Yeah. And
go ahead.
Yeah. We don't really ever know what the outcome's going to be. I definitely thought maybe there would be a Vance Kirk, and maybe there will be a Vance Kirk ticket.
I heard of that, Mama.
Beautiful. Just beautiful, isn't it? Who could deny this sort of a destiny? Erica being the president in her husband's place, and they're smiling and they're laughing about that plausibility. And we're never going to see those blueprints, guys. But they did say to Mikey McCoy, my 21-year-old person who I have no idea how he even got this job as chief of staff. But these blueprints are for you.
Yeah, I don't think
I didn't
that,
responsibly give them
Charlie
to someone that was running my estate, lawyers. No, I wanted to leave these for you and to Erica because I don't know, she just would understand these blueprints.
Yeah, Blue Eyes.
With everything that I have thus far uncovered about Erica, I do believe that was her ultimate goal, the White House. I think Elizabeth Lane read Erica correctly when she posited that she may be a psychopath because, in my opinion,
I may be
only
wrong,
a psychopath could,
could,
after her husband's public assassination, offer a raise to Dan Flood, the security guard who failed Charlie in every possible manner and way on September 10th. Only a psychopath who does not experience human emotions in the way that humans experience them would be capable of offering and then giving an in-home interview to the New York Times in the immediate days following her husband's assassination. The New York Times, a publication who her husband hated, and would then tell that journalist that the least traumatizing part was the idea of raising her children without a father. Okay? A psychopath is the best answer that I can come up with for why she felt compelled to go into the office the same week and to bring her kids every day rather than tending to their every emotional need at home as they come to the realization that they will never see their father ever again.
Let me tell you, that was a rough time for me.
My best explanation.
I was 7
my
when
best
I lost
explanation for
my
why
dad.
she told Jesse Waters that she had zero fear. None at all. No, she wasn't scared to walk out the door the very next day with her kids in tow. I think nearly everyone in the world felt a little less safe in the days following Charlie's assassination, but not his wife, Erica Kirk. No. Erica lies pathologically, and the media is trying to tell us that it's perfectly understandable, relatable even. It's actually divine. She lies because she's so godly that she forgave the person who allegedly murdered her husband before she even saw evidence of his guilt.
Damn.
And despite an overwhelming amount of evidence mounting to the contrary, Erica is so godly that she even helped to validate the implausible parts of the narrative regarding Tyler Robinson. The implausible parts, like the neck stopping a 30-06 bullet. She came up and crafted the Superman steel neck and all. No questions did she have, just faith, deep faith, and lies, a lot of lies. And to be sure, whatever the attempt was with Erica, pay attention to me, media. It has failed categorically, so stop it. Okay, all of your little media spells are failing as of late because we've recognized that they are very easily defeated by truth, loud truth. And more people are daring to speak it. More people are feeling inspired by Tucker Carlson to stand up and to recognize what it is we are fighting in this world. True evil. Old school, ancient evil. We even have comedians that are daring to make jokes about the obvious. The obvious. Like Tim Dillon. Take a listen.
You know, you look at the Kirk thing, right? Remember that? You look at that, and you try to zoom out and go,
fucking
all right,
behind him. Boy, howdy.
Tragic death on its face. We see a furry's friend, the thing. Okay. Then we zoom out, we go, wait, the wife's weird. Something up with the wife. The organization's weird.
But you know what, though? It's sad to even call that old-fashioned because that's how I remember everything. I mean, I'm old, but I ain't that fucking old. That's what I was saying this morning. What happened to fucking men and their backbone, man? Because no matter how anybody likes it, a man is meant to lead. I mean, it's in the Bible. And that's not no disrespect towards any women at all, because I'm going to tell you right now, I could not do a woman's job. But a man is supposed to provide and protect. It is his job to be the leader of the family. It's a woman's job to talk sense into him now, but it's a man's duty to fucking lead and protect.
Guy's dead. She's out there with sparklers. You know, they're doing Cirque du Soleil.
I kind of thought the same thing about her age and her history. It was hard for me to believe that she was.
Now we find out, like,
with you.
The wife it's beyond weird. It's creepy. And there's a very good chance that this woman was his handler, that he was this powerful young guy who raised a lot of money for a lot of people and took a lot of money from a lot of people. And money's never free. So you think about it, you say you have this, how do you direct a guy like that who's incredibly important? He's running the
kind of bad
largest young voter, you know, registration.
And be like, damn, that didn't make no damn sense.
Organization. He's handling large sums of money. He's out there sculpting narrative as it regards to
and something else with Charlie's
domestic and foreign policy.
Whole situation when his parents didn't come, really, and not saying that they needed to be like front runners in the public, but you just didn't see them much. And I was like, something's not right. You know what I mean? Because if something happened to me, my mom would be right there with Amanda every step of the fucking way.
If
she was able to.
Who comes in, and she may have loved him.
And me and my mom don't even get along that good.
Why wouldn't a handler love her husband? Because even though she was his Mossad handler and probably had him killed, no marriage is perfect. None. Not one. No marriage is perfect. Truly. No marriage is perfect. There's no marriage that is perfect. She may have been his handler, and they came to her one day and said, he found out you're his handler. Or she might have told them, she might have said, listen, we got problems. This guy, and I'm not the only one saying this, don't kill me.
I wish we was back in 1980s,
I'm
bro.
saying,
It's
we're
fixing
not
to be
breaking news
1980
here.
again.
We're not breaking ground. We're reviewing.
I think
We're
make
analyzing.
it that way.
We're like behind the 8 ball. This woman may have called someone up and said, we got bad news here. This guy found all the laundered money, and now he knows I'm his handler, and he thinks that invalidates the marriage because I'm his handler. And they were like, can we do anything about it? Is there anything we can do here? And she goes, I don't know. And then they go, well, we might have to, And she cried, and she was sad, whatever. And I'm not saying any of that happened. I'm saying that's more reasonable than what kind of we're being told. That's all.
And of course, he is correct. He's absolutely nothing that we're being told is reasonable whatsoever. It doesn't make any sense. We are very quickly arriving at a moment. By the way, I noted from my producer that some of you guys on YouTube got cut off for the first 4 minutes of the show. Just to let you know, we are speaking about people who were having a panic, a meltdown on X because of Tucker Carlson's tweet. Very simple tweet. He said, pray the spell breaks and the world is saved. What I am positing is the reason why they are so triggered is because of the word spell, which implies witchcraft, which implies the occult. And that is what this is. That is the moment that we are arriving in, is that we need to wake up to what it is that the people at the top believe. What is their guiding theology?
Look how much
that
they're
keeps
pushing
us
this train
constantly embedded in
Yeah,
wars
it's kind
in
of
foreign
calmed down a little
territories,
bit here
constantly
recently, but they were pushing
murdering
that shit
children,
hard as fuck.
looking the other way when children are being harmed. This brings me to President Trump, who has actually transformed into the longest running joke. It didn't take for me Charlie Kirk's death to wake up to what he was very fast becoming and what he now is. And I will have a lot to say to him, a lot to say about him when we get back from this quick break. All right, you guys, some major news for the silver market. The United States has officially added silver to its critical minerals list, raising important questions about what this designation means for national security and economic viability. So when you buy silver to help protect your savings, you're also buying a critical mineral that's needed for effective treatments. This is where the wellness could sicken you, right? The human spirit isn't really meant to contend with that sort of deceit. You're not supposed to even fathom a scenario where someone like Charlie Kirk quite literally dedicates his entire professional career, builds up an organization meant to help Trump, to empower Trump, conservative principles, one way or the other. And in return, when Charlie Kirk is assassinated in front of the world, Trump dedicates a total of two tweets, 3 tweets at most, to demanding, and he never demanded an investigation. And one of those tweets that he dedicates to Charlie Kirk is an AI image of Charlie hugging an Israeli flag. Yeah, it's pretty gross. Trump has shown more interest in debunking the mainstream media narrative about whether or not he's balding than he showed any interest in investigating who murdered a person who was supposed to be his dear friend. It was, I will employ every reason. Nope. He was good. So how exactly are we supposed to process that? We are to simply understand, I think, that Trump has loyalty to no one but himself. Probably wasn't even anything that deep that they offered him. It was probably just like, hey, we'll give you a piece of real estate in Gaza with your name on
PVD
it.
podcast is
Also,
what I believe.
favorable headlines in the New York Times. We put that on your desk every morning and we tell you this is how everybody thinks. You think they still have power?
About genocide.
Honestly, that's probably all it took.
I honestly believe that.
For Trump to betray not just the legacy and the memory of Charlie Kirk, but also his supporters. The very supporters who followed him into battle. Some who literally spent time in prison after January 6th because they believed in him. Trump has betrayed every last single one of us, okay? Make no mistake about that. Trump is now a never-Trumper. The very people that we had to fight to get Trump into office, he is now partnered with and insulting us. And he thinks that we're too stupid to notice or something. That he promised low gas prices, that he promised no more forever wars, no more involvement in Middle East conflict. And we're now getting the exact opposite. And that's happening because he's a coward. He is a coward for doing this to the American people. And that's going to be his legacy. His legacy is going to be a person who could not stand
Well, I
up
like it when
to
she
Bibi
gets on
Netanyahu,
somebody's
a
ass.
person who just loves money and loves the idea of his name on anything. This is what the world will remember about Donald Trump. Thus far, in 1 year, to recap, his administration has worked to allow the slow erosion of the First Amendment on college campuses, special carve-outs for anti-Semitism. So, in effect, hate speech laws. There's a new IHRA definition for anti-Semitism, a definition that is so broad that it includes, quote, accusing Jewish citizens of being more loyal to Israel or to the alleged priorities of Jews worldwide than to the interest of their own nation.
What's up, that bitch?
That's interesting because he then because he doesn't even know what they're writing and what they're putting together, he's not paying attention, he hilariously violates his own law when he discusses his boss, Miriam Adelson. Take a listen to what he says.
Miriam, stand up, please. She really is. I mean, she loves this country. She loves this country. Her and her husband are so incredible. We miss him so dearly. But I actually asked her, I'm going to get her in trouble with this, but I actually asked her once, I said, so Miriam, I know you love Israel. What do you love more, the United States or Israel? She refused to answer. That might mean Israel, I must say. We love you. Thank you, darling, for being here. That's a great honor.
So Trump is saying that the person that he took $100 million, $200 million from, I think in the end, loves Israel more than she loves America. She served in the IDF. That's what he's saying to you. Trump's administration then delayed the release of and then gaslit us over the Epstein files. He called the files a Democratic hoax. He asked us famously, are we still talking about the Epstein files? Are we still talking about children being harmed? Yeah, make no mistake, that translates into providing cover for Jewish pedophiles, because that's what Jeffrey Epstein was, an occult Jewish pedophile. Trump told us no more forever wars. They definitely marketed themselves as pro-peace, him and Vance. That was the ticket that they ran on until Bibi Netanyahu said, Venezuela's anti-Semitic. Then we took out Maduro. And guess who benefited from that? I loved this headline so much. Venezuela sends first oil shipment to Israel in years in signs of relations improving. I bet relations have improved.
We're not doing that over here, bro.
Hey, look, Americans, your gas prices are going up. But the important thing to remember is that your tax-paying dollars were sent to support the military operation in Venezuela, which has thus far benefited Israel. And my best guess is that's at least part of the reason, the real reason why Trump is obsessed with acquiring Greenland, because they do have untapped crude oil, an estimated 31 billion barrels worth. That sure would go a long way for Israel's incessant need to murder, bomb, and destroy. Need a lot of that. Now, maybe you voted for Trump because you were a Maha mom. Have no fear, the traitor is here. Because on February 26th, Trump signed an executive order invoking the Defense Production Act to boost the production of glyphosate, which is what's found in Monsanto, right? That is the cancer-causing agent that is in the weed killer. We know it causes cancer. Maha moms fought, so that would not be a thing anymore. Toxic pesticides are apparently back on the table. But don't miss this. Okay, this is from the Washington Post, because people went, why do this? They wrote, but the largely over...
Hey, no disrespect to anybody, but I don't want all that bickering in the chat, man. There's too many places where everybody can do that shit at.
Part was the order's mention of something contentious in another way. the
People
manufacture of
come in here, I want them to
munitions
feel like they
used
can come
by
in
the
here and
United States
comment,
military.
ticket. If
Bayer,
you don't want to be
which
here,
makes
don't be here.
glyphosate,
You
is
know what I mean?
also the only
Nothing
company
personal
in the
towards
United States
anybody.
that manufactures a form of elemental phosphorus, which is called white phosphorus, which is used to make the weed killer. Ah, okay. Phosphorus. That white phosphorus is also used to make munitions deployed as smoke screens and incendiary devices
See, I
that
did
can
not,
violently burn property or
did not
people.
know that.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad that the Washington Post noted that everyone's talking about Monsanto, but nobody's paying attention to the fact that white phosphorus is also being manufactured by executive order.
You know,
And
they're
you're not going
mining
to
the
believe me, but
phosphorus around where I live at right now. And I didn't know that that's what that was used for.
guess what is being used right now in Lebanon? Check out this headline. Oh, Israel unlawfully using white phosphorus. I wonder where they're getting that from. I wonder
Florida.
where they're getting that from. Probably from the pro-peace ticket. It was all peace, peace, peace. It's always peace until Israel gets involved. They don't know peace. They don't want peace. Bibi instructed Trump to bomb Iran almost immediately. And gratefully, because Charlie Kirk was alive at that time, it was at first limited to just hitting their nuclear sites. And I shouldn't even say gratefully, by the way, because he promised us no involvement in overseas conflicts, but they at least pretended for a little bit like it was only going to be a limited operation. Now, some of us knew better because it's never ending. Baal requires constant blood sacrifice. The article of Charlie Kirk was then subsequently removed. And now where are we, right? The United States is preemptively bombing Iran. And the explanation that we are receiving is because Israel was going to bomb Iran. So we went ahead and did it for them just in case Iran responded by hitting American military bases. Wow, that's actually very confusing. That's dizzying. There's no way they actually said that. No, they did. Marco Rubio came right out and said exactly that. Take a listen.
The assessment that was made that if we stood and waited for that attack to come first before we hit them, we would suffer much higher casualties. And so the president made the very wise decision. We knew that there was going to be an Israeli action. We knew that that would precipitate an attack against American forces. And we knew that if we didn't preemptively go after them before they launched those attacks, we would suffer higher casualties and perhaps even higher those killed. And then we would all be here answering questions about why we knew that and didn't act.
I'm sorry, but under that scenario, if Israel was going to cause and stop that chain of events, wouldn't it have made sense for them to bomb Israel? Bomb Israel to prevent Israel from bombing Iran? Prevent Iran from retaliating by going after American bases because of our involvement with Israel and constantly sending them munitions and things of that nature? Just don't understand how the logic is Israel can't stop bombing people, so we have to bomb people for them. That's what he's telling you. And that's what we're doing. We just murdered 150 Iranian schoolgirls between the ages of 7 and 12 preemptively. Don't worry, guys. It was preemptively because Israel was probably going to bomb them and kill them. So we went ahead and did that for them. So long as you say preemptively, it makes it okay. Don't even think further. How much peace can we really?
Yeah, I didn't like seeing that school hit. I don't know who did what, but I wouldn't pay that past the government to lie about it. I'll just say that.
It's just too much peace. You say too much winning. It's like too much peace. Let's actually take a look at some live footage of the peace that we are currently spreading in the Middle East. Yeah. Preemptive peace. We had to do. I can explain it. I can explain it for you guys. It looks like peace. I will reiterate my perspective that Trump allowing this to happen, allowing this to go forward, it makes him a traitor. And it also makes him a coward.
How the hell did that get out?
And you would do well to accept that fact. Okay, stop playing left or right. Stop saying it would have been different if a Democrat was in office. Stop playing Republican or Democrat. Wake up. These people occupy both sides. And I believe very much that world wars are, in effect, global resets. That's why they always want them. They use propaganda to convince people to sign up for their own slaughter. Something that lives in my mind rent-free is Norm Finkelstein informing me that Israel had a literal and actual government policy known as mowing the lawn in Gaza, where the IDF would just at random begin shooting and killing Palestinians to ensure that the population didn't grow. Just like, oh, no, too much population. This is, to me, when I see everything going on right now, and there being no reason but like an insistence that we all have to just get ready for Armageddon, this feels to me like an opportunity to simply mow the lawn of people that stand against them. Population control has always been the aim, whether it's by vaccines, abortion propaganda, my body, my choice. Wake up. Like I said, left or right, it's the same end. It's the same thing that they are barreling towards. They want you to agree to murder your offspring or yourselves. Sign up for war. Here's some propaganda. You're going into the Middle East. There's no plan. There's going to be no end in sight. But man, could you imagine afterwards? You might even give you a Purple Heart. You won't be here to receive it. But just as was stipulated, by the way, for those of us who are making our way through the Jeffrey Epstein files, effectively having conversations openly about how in the future people won't even be able to reproduce on their own. That's their ultimate desire, to control birth and to control death. They want to be gods on earth. That's what they want to be. They see themselves as all we need to do is control birth and control death. And then we control everything. And make no mistake, Trump will, if they tell him to, at the behest of Bibi or Miriam Adelson, send your sons and daughters to die for Israel. Israel expects
Palestine
that.
had been there before them.
Right? They look at the Goyim and they say, that's ours. That those are our cattle.
Underneath.
They're already signaling that they're keeping their options open regarding whether they will need boots on the ground. Here is Israel's defense minister, Benny Gantz, discussing that he's not going to exclude that need. Take a listen.
We have 180,000 Revolutionary Guard, almost 1 million Basij, 2 million reservists who are Basij. They are the ones with the guns. Even if this campaign goes on for 4 to 5 weeks, is it fair to expect unarmed civilians to come out and take over their government?
Well, it's a very complicated situation over there, but I suggest we'll take it one step at a time. Currently, we are neutralizing Iran's command and control system and Iran capacity to influence the region.
Take the government over with no kind of guns,
I think we
no
have to
weapons,
be
no nothing. What are they supposed
decisive
to do?
on this. We must maintain operational offensive continuity to assess
Where's
where
John
are we all the time.
fucking Claude Van Damme when you
Do you
need
think eventually there will be a need for boots on the ground?
I would not exclude it for those reasons or other, but we'll have to see how it goes forward.
And will that include Israeli boots on the ground, do you think?
I exclude nothing. We've been waiting for 47 years, and we came to a point that every necessary means should be taken in order to achieve our goals.
It's just amazing. I love that the follow-up question was, is that going to include Israeli boots on the ground? Like, it's implied that it's not Israeli boots on the ground. And as a follow-up, it's like, oh, okay, if you do it, are you going to also include Israeli boots on the ground? And in that same vein, we have Caroline Leavitt signaling that a draft is not off the table because Trump is smart. Take a listen.
And the president had an interesting exchange on Air Force One over the weekend, Caroline. I want to get your take about this idea of troops on the ground. Mothers out there are worried that we're going to have a draft, that they're going to see their sons get in and daughters get involved in this. What do you want to say about the president's plans for troops on the ground? As we know, it's been largely an air campaign up until now.
It has been, and it will continue to be. And President Trump wisely does not remove options off of the table. I know a lot of politicians like to do that quickly, but the president, as commander-in-chief, wants to continue to assess the success of this military operation. It's not part of the current plan right now, but the president, again, wisely keeps his options on the table. But as commander-in-chief, there's no greater priority or responsibility to this president than, of course, protecting the American people and protecting our troops and our bases in the Middle East, which Iran has been threatening for 47 years. They have killed and maimed thousands of American soldiers, and President Trump was not going to allow Iran to attack our bases and our troops and our men and women in the Middle East first. And that's why he took this historic action by launching Operation Epic.
AD said something the other morning. Said when we was in, I think he said Iraq. Kuwait. Yeah, he was in Iraq. Kuwait was before. But anyways, he said, we just drove around aimlessly waiting on them to blow us up. Like, they didn't have any real plan. And you can't do that. You have, and I hate to say this, but when it's war, you have to fucking be in war. You can't be in a politically correct environment. That's not how it works. Can't fight
Fury.
with your hands tied behind your back.
That's right. He only allows Israel to do that. Only Israel is allowed to attack America. Only Israel got to get away with the Lavon affair. Only Israel is allowed to get away with what they did at the USS Liberty. That is a right reserved
Yeah, that didn't
for
sit
Israel.
well with me either when I
Attack
found that
and
out.
use
Oh,
Americans to maim and
shit.
caricature people. That is their right. It's a birthright. Probably promised them 3,000 years ago. I say the question is not if, by the way that they're speaking, the way that they have lied. They just keep pushing it and pushing it. Oh, no, it's just going to be Fort Dow, just Operation Midnight Hammer. That's it. Now it's suddenly, oh, no, we need to do a little bit more preemptively. Now it's, oh, the options are still maybe kind of on the table, but like it's smart for him to keep his options on the table. That sounds to me like the question is not if, but when. If, not if, but when that option is going to be executed. I think it's
Joe, I'm
actually
not
a
the only
crucial
one
part
that
of their
feels
plan
that
because
way.
it's time to mow the lawn. That's why Israel supporters like Bill Ackman went rabid over the weekend over me suggesting that maybe military men shouldn't sign up. Maybe you shouldn't sign up to join the military in America if this is the circumstance that we live in. Yeah, they want me imprisoned for merely mentioning that no one at this juncture should join the American military. Bill was retweeting people who were stipulating that it's actually a federal crime to tell people apparently not to sign up for the military. Why is that? Why do you think they're retweeting that? Why does the idea of Goyim not serving have them so stressed out? I mean, it's been them, they're the ones saying that every poll shows that America overwhelmingly support action in Iran. It's so overwhelming that they support what's happening in Iran, right? Americans hate Tucker Carlson. They hate Megyn Kelly. They hate Candace Owens, and they love Israel so much. Please take our tax dollars. Please, we just did this operation in Venezuela. You take the oil. No, you take everything. You guys get free healthcare. I'm giving you guys an opportunity to prove how honest you are, how much support Israel has. May you be hoisted on your own petard of shameless propaganda. In the meantime, I would like to reiterate my point. No American son or daughter should die for Israel. Flat out. No American son or daughter should die for Israel. Goyim, stand down. Go home. Find the legal means to exit the military, because there are legal means you can exit the military. You can, in fact, conscientiously object to military service. Military men, in case you didn't know, swear an oath to defend the Constitution of the United States of America. I don't really see that happening right now. I don't even see Trump doing that. From his flagrant violations of free speech to freedom of religion, Trump recently firing Carrie Prejean Bowler from the Religious Committee because Zionists didn't like her Catholic perspectives. Can anybody at all meaningfully point it out for me, which specific portion of the Constitution our commander-in-chief is currently doing a good job protecting? What is it? What you look around at? What has he done that you would be like, oh yeah, he is the person who is defending our Constitution? Better yet, show me which guaranteed constitutional right you believe that Trump will not violate for Israel. Can you point to one? Because I feel like right now we are all being forced into the servitude of a foreign nation. That seems to be the American reality right now. So I say, by all means, allow the Levins, the Ben Shapiros to sign their offspring up
exactly
instead.
why it takes
Allow the
two
Christian
parents to work in
Zionists,
a
the ones who make
fucking
videos,
family anymore.
telling you how devilish it is if you don't support Israel. They believe this is messianic.
That
That
shit
Bibi
pisses
was
me
sent
off.
to usher in Armageddon. That's
Just
going to
waste your
bring
fucking
Jesus back.
kid's life away working. You know what I mean? Well, these motherfuckers.
I urge you, all of you Christian Zionists, sign up for the military today. Please, you guys, stop tweeting. Stop screaming about Tucker Carlson. You have something much more important to do. There's a messianic mission right now. Go to Iran. Go remove the thousands of dead, innocent Palestinian children from beneath the rubble in Gaza so that Trump can build his hotel. I want you guys to be the change that you wish to see in the world. You've got this. Allow the Goyim to stand down because you guys have the vision. You have the understanding. It's biblical. Go for it. You can do this without us. We'll be right back after a break. All right, you guys, way before the food industry failed us and started making low quality foods and hiding behind nutrition labels, one thing was always no upfront fees and no obligations. And I hope that what you take away from this episode is that this is gaslighting on a scale so epic that I asked my husband meaningfully this weekend. We went to get something to eat, and I just said, how much more are they going to twist the fabric of reality? Like, I've never seen anything like it. I've never seen like them pretending like 99% of people support something that they just so obviously do not support. And they just do it. You can do a poll right now, anywhere, X, Facebook, everybody loves it. They're just releasing bots, fake people on the internet to pretend that this is being supported, that people just love war. They just love dead children in the Middle East. It's just made up. We all know they're lying. They know that we know that they're lying. That's why they're angry. If they were actually winning, they wouldn't be angry.
I agree.
No one was
Blue Eyes.
angry
I agree,
during the
buddy.
Obama years because we all generally were still a bit sleepy, whether you were left or right. We were all generally a bit sleepy, and we thought that America was, to some degree, doing the right thing. We're not existing under that anymore. We've awakened to what they're doing. You know, the power, it's really funny to take a look at what Israel has done. They don't realize that the power that they had over America did not exist in the money. It didn't exist in the blackmail. Yeah, that's element of it. Yeah, you blackmail a bunch of politicians. You get them caught doing weird things on camera. I mean, whatever they have, I imagine whatever they have on Lindsey Graham is so far beyond. I mean, it's like, it's got to be disgusting. That's how I feel in the way that he acts. It's like manic almost in support of Israel. Randy Fine, I would say the same thing about. But that wasn't the power that Israel held. The power was in the illusion. The power was in the millions of Americans, the majority of us thinking and believing that Israel was innocent, believing that Israel was just a tiny country in the Middle East, believing that they had never done anything to anybody. And then they bet all that. They bet all that power. They said, you know what, now we've got money. Now we are controlling the troops. Now we are, which we've been doing for decades. We've got the military. We've got the presidency. We've got all this stuff. So now we don't even care. We're going to go mask down. No, the mask down. No, you needed your mask up. So this is the problem that they have. And this is why they're angry, because they recognize entire generations no longer believe them. Nobody believes in the innocence of Israel anymore. People are looking up and understanding how much we have been lied to. People are pulling their kids out of school so that they don't suffer that same ignorance that we suffered for a very long time. I'm speaking especially to millennials. Perhaps there is some contingent of people who watch Fox News all day and really believe that this is just going to be a small little strategy. Yeah, give it to Iran. But no, we're not falling for it. We're not falling for the Russia. Russia's our biggest enemy. It's always the Middle East. It's always the Muslims. We're awake from that. And I think that is what they really messed up. They messed up in underestimating how much the illusion mattered. Anyway, Curious Joel writes, JFK and Charlie Kirk's assassinations were examples of domestic regime change. I include CK because Turning Point USA was a military organization operating on behalf of the United States and Philadelphia. Maybe we wouldn't be so fond of regime change wars if we fully knew that it happened to us too. I mean, the fact that they were, when they sent me that cease and desist, they wrote for saying that Turning Point is like militarily got infiltrated. Everybody's in the military. I'm sorry I pointed out the background of all of these pastors and Turning Point Faith and Erica's mother. It just seems like a lot of military people arrived very quickly. That's all I'm saying. Sorry for noticing. TJ Kurt writes, thank you for highlighting the fact that many of us gave thousands of dollars through Give Send Go so that Erica could stay at home with her babies. While I'm waiting forever for my thank you note, she says it's not enough, so she will still need to work to support them. It is maximum ingratitude. Yeah, it is maximum ingratitude. And I could have gone over and over in terms of how much money was given to her. I think someone pointed out that I even missed that Elon Musk donated money to them. So no, there is no reason that Erica needs to be at the office every day. That doesn't make any sense. She did not need to become the CEO. She's not honoring her husband. We can hear her husband's words of what he wanted, what his vision was for his children. It is impossible to be a sole provider, to be the sole parent, and for those kids to grow up with the influence that they need, having a parent home while you're being busy being the CEO and chairman of an alleged now billion-dollar company. I mean, again, they think we have no common sense.
Yes,
That
you
you
just
really can
played
just
some
be
of it, Blue Eyes.
a single mom and somehow run an organization and say, no, my
It was
children
all
are
gory
happy because
looking,
they're at the
wasn't it?
office. They're at the office. This is exactly where toddlers love to be. They love to just be running around an office. Intuition, Candace, great job. Kabbalah, Satanism. There are many commonalities. Yes, there is indeed. They are attempting to bring their Messiah back. Who is that exactly? We don't know, but we know. Yeah, I mean, we are looking at the synagogue of Satan. There's no question. I mean, look up the amount of blood sacrifice this requires. How could anybody be under any delusions? It's very clear what they want and what they are willing to do to get it. That's more important. What they are willing to do to get it. And this is why you have to learn about Frankism. You got to learn about Jacob Frank. You have to learn that similarly, you had this movement of people similar to the Christian Zionists that are like unhinged, looking at Paula White, the pastors that are surrounding Trump, that they believed in this messianic mission. And what was he? He was a mentally disturbed psychopath, is what Jacob Frank was. And they followed him anyway. They thought he was a Messiah. That's what I see when I look at the people who are unflinchingly following Bibi Netanyahu, who can look at what happened in Gaza and go, this was by God's design. Who is the God that you are referring to? What God requires sacrifice of children in that
I'll
manner?
never say
Least of all
sorry
for a
about it.
hotel.
You ain't never did nothing wrong,
For
baby.
property that was promised to a lot of these pastors, by the way. Property in
Pointing
Gaza.
something out
They've
is
already
what I
got
want.
like homes that are promised to them.
I appreciate those of you that are interested in what I'm interested in. And I appreciate it when you point it out, because that's the only way I'm going to figure out what the fuck is going on. Like I've said, I've spent so many years working with just my head down that when I finally picked it up and looked around, I'm like, holy fuck, what is really going on in the world? I'm
To
not
convince
scared
their
to say it.
churches to support this, just so you know. D. Shaw writes, look into the Hellfire Club if you have not already. I have. Yes, I need to join your book club. Yes, we are constantly talking about Freemasonry. Hellfire
For
Club
those
that
of you that
actually
ain't listened
gets
to it, I
into
want you
because
to
they
hear.
visited
I want
Paris.
you to hear this fucking interview that Tucker did damn Mike Huckabee. And at one time, my church was pushing Mike Huckabee hard, very hard.
France is problematic for a ton of reasons, but I believe the Hellfire Club was in England. If I remember correctly, it was either an Oxford club or Cambridge club. I'm aware of it though. Dr. Tom Najar writes, I want your honest opinion. How do you feel about rooting for Trump during the elections? Do you feel some responsibility for the chaos we are in? People make mistakes, and I understand, but how didn't you see this coming? This is even the way you're setting up this question implies that like the other
Look, and I
option would have been
know
better.
all of
Like,
us don't
you had two
feel
options.
and believe the same about things, and that is okay. The only way that we're ever going to get through anything is to try to understand how other people feel about things and why they think that.
Options. You had Kamala, who absolutely nobody voted for. I mean, do you think that Biden was running the White House?
No.
Who do you think was running the White House? Biden couldn't even form a sentence.
Yeah, that's why I say Biden didn't do
It is the
shit.
same apparatus that was running the White House when Biden was in office that would have continued running it, had Kamala run,
What's
that
up,
is running
Billy?
now that Trump is running. That's the way that I see things. And I don't know, has Trump grown almost erratic in the manner in which he is gaslighting us? Yeah, I definitely did not foresee that Epstein moment coming. You know, I was not a person, I spent time explaining to people that Kamala was not who she said she was. She was completely lying about her past, completely lying about her history. And I did the Kamala Chronicles. But I've been off that like hardcore MAGA Trump train for a while, actually. Obviously, I think that the thing that does let me down the most, that has been so shocking to me, is for him to have survived the assassination attempt. And what he is dedicating the rest of his time to is destroying America for Israel. Like, you survive multiple assassination attempts, and your instinct is, what are they telling you? You survived it so that you could do more for Israel? I can't even comprehend what is going on. And yeah, it sucks. It absolutely sucks. And I think a lot of people right now just feel completely duped. But if there's one thing that I'm grateful for, it's that I do believe the left and the right are coming to this understanding that they always pretend it's an either or, and it's not. It's not an either or. We lose every single time. They have found different ways to get us toward move us toward constantly handing more power over to them. It's just how they argue it, how they argue to get us to that thing. Left versus right. Mama C writes, during Charlie's memorial, my husband saw Tyler Boyer and said, we need to remember that guy. Turning Point has emotionally manipulated too many into thinking that these are decent, God-fearing people when it's clear that they are not. Actually, I'll tell you that I have it on very good authority that they have had to cancel events that Erica was intended to speak at because there has been a backlash. There's been a backlash, and there should be a backlash when you are not being told the truth and you are being lied to, and the lies seem to be pathological, small lies, big lies. You should not welcome.
Yeah, I have a bad
and you,
going
least
through
of all,
here,
should
really.
welcome this emotional manipulation that comes with, well, you kind of have to accept the lies that you're being told because her husband was Charlie Kirk. That's her Charlie. That is absolutely ridiculous. Intuition Jen writes, Amy Loves Music writes, thank you. I'm not going to lie. Charlie was one of the reasons that I voted for Trump. Do I think that he was better than Kamala? Yes. But an independent artist named Ren called it choosing between calamities or herpes. God bless you, Candace. Stay safe. I'm chill, just asking a question. But if Erica have a ticket, they won't get my vote, if that even matters. Yeah, I don't think, I think anything that Erica is on or involved in, unless she does a mask down, sit down, tell the truth, sort of interview, no holds bar. That's the only way I can imagine. Here's my phone. Here's Charlie's phone. And maybe stop saying Shabbat Shalom. That's the only way I could see that there would be a chance for her to do anything. But yeah, do anything in the future in politics. But I think the chances of that are effectively 0%. Anyway, lastly, Ahmed writes, awesome work, Candace. Thank you for speaking truth. I want to remind you guys, if you'd like to support us speaking truth, you can head to our website, CandaceOwens.com. We have tons of merch on the website. It's our easiest way to support us and to support just independent voices. There aren't too many. Actually, there are a lot now that are getting, but I mean, there aren't too many in the mainstream media organ that are willing to tell the truth. We know that's true. And that's why I always say, make sure you pray for Megyn Kelly. They've been attacking her really hard. Pray for Tucker because he is bringing up these very same topics. And this really gets to the belly of the beast. It really does. That's what we're looking at. Anyway, you guys, that's all we have for you today. I'm sorry, by the way, if you're on YouTube and that first few minutes of the show got cut off. We will try to upload it later. Anyway, we'll see you guys tomorrow.
All right, let's listen to what Tucker. Let's listen to Tucker and see what the fuck he got to say.
That there are power outages in Bangladesh. Bangladesh, yes. Asia is suffering. The world is suffering due to the choke point of Hormuz, the Straits of Hormuz, that are closed or semi-closed by Iran and have been since this began. And that's causing massive downstream effects in markets, in manufacturing, in the global economy. How long is that going to last? What's the end game there? And then, of course, the war itself, which is playing out in Iran and Israel and throughout the Arab world, really, primarily in the Gulf states, but not just the Gulf states. What's the damage? Well, the truth is, in a lot of cases, we don't really know, because the censorship of this war on social media, and of course, the big mainstream outlets are censored, always have been. But the promise of social media was you could get unmitigated information. You could get videos live from the scene. And now suddenly you can't. That lasted about 24 hours before the clampdown. And in part, that was by governments of the Gulf states.
And I don't care what anybody says. I've been watching that fucking footage of the rockets and shit, and that shit's on a loop. I'm here to tell you. That shit is not live.
They don't want physical destruction of their countries broadcast to the world. The government of Israel is
claiming that it's live, but it's not live.
Videos of Tel Aviv or Haifa burning.
Hell, Bruce Mitchell thinks that the whole fucking place is flattened over there
for posting that stuff online. But it's not just the governments. of those countries that are imposing censorship. It's the social media companies here that are imposing censorship on the American people who are paying for all of this. So they can't know. And then there does seem to be a kind of censorship practiced by the US government around casualties and deaths. How many people have died so far in this conflict? How many have been injured? Where and under what circumstances? Now, these are sensitive questions in any conflict. And of course, you don't in any way.
I mean, I watched that shit for God knows.
You don't want to dispirit the troops whom we are rooting for sincerely, always and everywhere, rooting for Americans in whatever theater, in whatever war. It wasn't of their choosing. In some cases, they are just the people who suffer first and most due to the decisions of politicians. So we're always on their side, and you don't want to make things worse for them. On the other hand, Americans do have, on a fundamental level, a right to know the effects of this war on their countrymen. If Americans are killed, we have a right to know that. And yet there's some indication that we really don't. So as you try to figure out what's going on, keep in mind, you can't really get the full picture because the clampdown on information. And so in the conversation that we're about to have, we're going to go through what we think we know. In some cases, we might be wrong. Just want to be honest about that up front. Very hard to know what the truth is at this stage, really at any stage, but particularly in the face of this kind of censorship.
I don't know, Shady J.
We're going to try to be as honest as we possibly can and provide as much information as we possibly can, given the limitations.
It wouldn't surprise me, though.
This war matters, maybe more than most wars. This war hasn't been settled. Clearly, there are parties who would like to settle it, but no one person is in charge of whether it gets settled. Israel is a partner in this war, probably the first war the United States has ever fought.
And I'm going to tell y'all right now,
Partner with decision-making authority.
you can think whatever you want, but when Trump cut China off from all that oil, do you think the president of China, the leader of China, is just going to sit back and not fucking do anything? Come on, man. That was a slap in his face. When he took the oil from Venezuela and he took the oil from Iran, he took a lot of fucking oil away from China that they need over there. Now, I get why he did it, but that doesn't mean that they're not going to retaliate. Trust me. When you feel like you've been wronged by somebody, you're going to do something about it. Now, how that's the form that's going to come, I have no idea. I can only imagine. And I hate what I'm imagining. You know what I'm saying? I don't like it.
It's very different from going into Afghanistan with a NATO coalition. Norway didn't have veto power over everything, but Israel does. And so it's complex, very complex. And the Iranians have their own, of course, completely different agenda. So it may not be settled anytime soon. We're praying that it is. But more fundamentally, this is a different kind of war. So over the course of our lifetimes, most wars the United States has fought, all of them really on some level wars of choice. The U.S. hasn't been invaded really since 1812. So all these are wars that the U.S. government
I don't think they can invade us.
Or start.
I mean, they can.
And pretty much all of them.
I mean, they have kind of, but like big armies, I don't think.
Preserving the order of the world, the international order, the rules-based order, whatever you want to call it. We're preserving the way things are. And this country we're going to war with violated the rules. Therefore,
yeah, but the U.S. still took it away from China, is what I'm saying, Blue Eyes. Even though we didn't, we may have not gotten it, but he cut China off from getting it.
Wants to get nukes. They can't have nukes. We can't have more nuclear proliferation. You can't have rogue states with nuclear weapons. Weapons of mass destruction are bad. Got it. We've heard that before. Of course, the effect of this will be to radically accelerate proliferation around the world, because what's the lesson of what we're doing right now?
Venezuela's oil was 20% of China's oil consumption,
because they have nukes.
Just like Iran was 30 to 40% of China's oil consumption. So you're looking at roughly 60% of China's oil gone because of what the U.S. has done, no matter who ended up with the oil in the end.
And if you're a bystander to a war and happen to get caught up in it, like the Gulf states are right now, no one is going to protect you. These security guarantees, formal and informal, are not
what they're saying in the back streets. What we call the back streets is Russia's been Russia has
who's going to stop it?
Russia was tipping Iran off to where
Countries
American
that feel
ships
they're
are.
sincerely on their own.
So
have
there's
every
something
incentive
working in
to
the
have the most
backfield here.
effective deterrence possible, and that would, at this point, be nuclear weapons. So you're going to see a lot more nuclear armed states in the next few years, without question. So if the point of this was to preserve the status quo on nukes, it had the opposite effect. But the point of this was not to preserve the status quo at all. It was to overturn the status quo, to usher in a new age. That's the point of this war.
I
This is
just know if I was the president of
pivot
China,
in
I wouldn't let
history.
that shit slide.
A lot of the people
That's all I
supporting
know.
it know that. Now, they're really in two groups. One are people motivated by religious impulse. That would include some Israelis, some religious Jews, not all, but some. And that would include some Christians.
But
Christian
hell, what do
Zionists.
I know? I thought China
And
and,
both groups
and
believe that they're helping to
Japan was all the
accelerate
same
the
people
end of history.
at one
Again,
time.
the end of time, the return of the Messiah, however you want to describe it. But both groups believe that history is linear. It began in one place and arrives at another with the return of God to earth. And then history ends and we are redeemed or damned, depending. So that's the basic idea.
I did, bro.
Both
I
of
didn't
these
know
groups
no
seem
better.
under the impression that they can force God's hand, that they can bring this about through an act of will or violence, which is to say both groups believe on some level that they are God, which they are not. They're not in charge of history. You can't force
You're
God's
just
hand.
honest, mama.
He's in charge. You are not.
I mean, they look a lot alike,
Both groups
right?
have lost
Can you tell them
sight of
apart?
So that's their motive. And then there are secular boosters of the war, promoters of the war, planners of the war. And their vision, while not strictly speaking religious, is not really so different. They would like to usher in rule by technology, whether that's mass surveillance, whether it's transhumanism, the merging of man and machine, but the rule of the earth by technology. And there are a lot of people who want this, and a lot of people who think it's inevitable. And this is the moment where that
Their height's why we don't fit in none of them fucking cars. I know that.
So again, this is
What's
not
up,
a
Miss T. Dam?
war that is confined to the region. This is not a war between the United States and Israel and Iran. This is not a war designed to prevent a rogue state from getting nukes. It was never that. This is a war designed to usher in a new age of man, a new period in history, a new world. And so wars like that are fundamentally theological in nature. That's theology, whether it's secular or religious. It's still
All these
theology.
big fucking words. I just wish they'd talk like us, though. I really do.
And wars like that aren't resolved quickly because we're talking not just about disarming a madman. We're talking about changing the nature of life on this planet forever. So big stakes in the minds of the people pushing this. And that means this is going to go on
Sneaking up on me.
for a while, declared or not. And as it does, how do we respond? Well, we pray.
No lady just snuck up on me, scared the shit out of me.
Thing you can do is to say prayers for peace. Number one, most effective thing you can do. But two, keep an eye on the effect of this war on us here in the United States. We're prosecuting this war. We're the main combatant here. We're spending the most money, dropping the most bombs. And how do we do that? So the key, really, whether you think this is insane, as a lot of people do, probably the majority of the country believes that, or you think it's necessary. Some people do believe that. Fox News viewers believe that. Democratic leaders believe that in the House.
They say 85%.
But no matter what side you're on,
from what I've
the
seen,
United States needs to behave with honor.
that's in
Why is
question.
that? Because the whole point of being the United States, you can't have wars in a democratic republic or in a country where the people supposedly rule, where their consent is necessary, whether it is or not. That's what we tell ourselves. You can't have wars unless you believe that you are on the deepest level better than the people you're fighting. We're not savages. They are. Therefore, we get to kill them. And we've always told ourselves that. And in some cases, it has been absolutely true. Whether we can kill them or not is another question. It's a moral question. But as a sort of matter of civic engagement, the population has to believe they're better than the people they're fighting, or else you can't have the war. And you're really sort of flirting with revolution at that point, and we don't want that. So in order to believe you're better than your opponent, you have to be. You have to behave with honor. And so, for example, if innocents are killed, girls at a school, to name a current example, you have to believe that it was accidental, and you have to say out loud that was
Blue
and
eyes.
in this specific case,
Oh, I bet he was
bombing
dreading
of
that
a
shit, looking
rural
for a
school
chair or
was
anything to put at the end of the bed.
naval base.
That's funny.
It was apparently the school of choice for officers at the naval base. These were the children, the daughters of the people we're fighting. You have to believe that was accidental. Despite the fact it was hit twice, 40 minutes apart, looks very much like a double tap, which is to say a bombing and then an attack on the people coming to rescue the injured. That's what it looks like. But as an American, you have to believe this was a tragic mistake. But we have to verify that. We have to know for certain that it was in order to keep our honor. Because if you wake up in the morning and you're living in the kind of country that thinks it's okay to kill not simply military officers, but their daughters, that country's not worth fighting for. Now, speaking for myself, I am assuming that was a tragic mistake. But it's important to get to the bottom of it. How did this happen? Were these autonomous weapons that made the decision? Was there an AI program that targeted this school that thought it was something else or thought it was within bounds and targeted it, bombed it, and then bombed it again 40 minutes later? If that's the case, no more autonomous weapons for us. Should we really be making life or death decisions with a machine with no human interaction, no human sign off on that? Of course not. That's grotesque. To hand
He
the power
thinks
of
it was
life and
us,
death
too.
over to a machine? That's just transparently insane. Of course, you would never do that if you were a civilized country. And we can't do that. Did we do that? We need to find out. And if we did, we can't do that again. And we have to apologize for it.
Yeah, apology
You
don't make that
kill
shit no better.
children of your enemies. In fact, you can't kill innocents, period, because we're the West and we believe that people are responsible for the sins they commit, not for the sins their relatives committed or their ancestors or their future descendants or people who look like them. We don't believe that because we believe in the individual soul. Each person individually accountable to God and to the U.S. military for the things he does right and wrong, period. Collective punishment is the opposite of what we believe. That's what Israel believes. And that's why on a basic level, Israel does not have a Western outlook, because the Israeli government believes it is okay to kill people on the basis of their bloodline. They are Amalek, as the prime minister often says, again and again and again. This is Amalek. Kill not just the perpetrator, but his wife, his children, their children, his pets. This is a theological concept that Christians and the West reject as grotesque and evil. We cannot participate in that ever, because the moment we do, we are not better than the people we're fighting at all. And we can't have that. It's a stain on all of us. So we need to find out what happened there. And the second thing we need to do is make certain that the diplomatic efforts the United States made to get to a political agreement before the war were legitimate, that they weren't a ruse designed to distract and trap the Iranians. Why? Because
How many people's in agreement with what Trump's doing right now?
an honorable nation states its objectives out loud, attempts in good faith a political nonviolent solution, and then if that fails, resorts to force. That's the American tradition. That's the Western tradition. That's not the Eastern tradition, but it's our tradition.
If I'm honest
We
with
have to
you,
uphold it. And as of right now, we have to believe that's what we did, and that it just didn't work.
I don't want to see no boots on the ground. I just don't.
President Trump was effectively forced by the Israeli government into this.
I understand what he's doing
But if it ever
and why he's
emerges
done
that a
it.
diplomatic
Yeah,
effort with
I think we
Iran,
don't.
both in February of this year and in June of last year, were fake, and they were designed to lull the Iranians into a false sense of security so we could launch a sneak attack on them. How is that better than Pearl Harbor? How is that better than any dishonorable sneak attack in history? Of course, it's not. It's low. It's beneath the United States. It's beneath us as American citizens. And anyone who participated in that needs to be punished for it right away. And as a practical matter, it makes diplomacy of all kinds impossible. How do we settle the conflict between the United States and Russia using Ukraine, poor Ukraine, as a proxy? We fight the war, Ukrainians die. How do we settle that conflict? By the way, a lot of us wish it had been settled before launching a war on Iran. Now the Russians are, of course, giving targeting information to the Iranians. Why wouldn't they? We've done the same with the Ukrainians for the last 4 years.
Yeah,
that should have been settled. But it's going to be hard to settle it now because the message to the rest of the world is American diplomacy is fake. It's not real. You send negotiators in, they distract us, and then you prepare a sneak attack on us. Now, we don't know that's what happened. There's no proof that's what happened, but we need to find out what exactly did happen, because you can't behave that way. It's a disservice to American citizens if you behave.
Yeah, that's what I'm gathering. That's what I'm gathering, Blue Eyes.
That way. And it makes our future much, much tougher. Much, much tougher. Spring is the most refreshing time of year. Nothing complements it better than I'm sympathetic to the impulse to lie during war because, and even now, I mean, I think certain things are true. I don't know that they are, but I probably wouldn't say it because there are consequences. So I understand that. I think it's wrong, but I get it. And I agree with you. It's impossible for me to imagine that an American would press go on a Tomahawk headed for a girls' school. I just can't believe that. And I don't believe it. But I do believe that we have autonomous weapons at work and that some of these targeting decisions are being made by machines, not people. There's a park called Police Park in Tehran that apparently was blown up because, and you can understand if it was an AI program making these decisions, it says police and that's enough. I'm just guessing. I don't know why it was blown up, but it was a park, no reason to target it. That suggests that autonomous weapons, that machines are making these decisions. And that strikes me as totally wrong. Tempting, I get it, but is that acceptable to you?
No, but I think you have something else at work. And I also saw this in the past in another air campaign. That is enormous pressure from the top. Give us more targets. Right. We need them now. We have all this equipment. We have all this aircraft, all these ships. They need more targets. Where are the targets? And at the time we were engaged, we couldn't find very many valid, legitimate military targets in Yugoslavia. Yugoslavia is not a very developed country. It's quite backward. And so that's when you begin to say, well, look, we'll hit the, this VW Gulf factory. Why? Well, it could have military use. How? Well, they could take the automotive parts and it could be put into the army. This is the sort of mentality that you get. And you blow it up. You blow it up because you can find it. You have multiple bridges across the river, and somebody comes and says, there are only 2 bridges there with any military utility. So you get those. Then you come back later on and say, well, we need more targets. Well, what about these bridges? Well, they don't really have any. Could it be used? Could soldiers cross that bridge? Well, I suppose so. Blow it up. And I think that's what happens over time with air and missile campaigns. You go into something where you don't have a ground force. There is no long-term strategic outcome that forces you to include all the elements of power and to think through carefully your objectives. You're being told our job is to go in there and bomb the Iranian government into submission. And that means its 93 million person population is going to be made to suffer until the government relents and surrenders and says, okay, we'll do what the Israelis want. I don't think that's plausible. I don't think it's militarily useful. I don't think it's strategically attainable. But it looks to me as though Mr. Netanyahu's delusions, and you were talking a little bit about this when you touched on the issue of Greater Israel, have now become President Trump's reality. I think he is fully absorbed, assimilated into the Israeli mentality that this state, these people, must be destroyed or bent to Israel's will. Because if they're not, then Israel will never be safe. And if Israel's not safe, then potentially we're not safe. Well, you and I know that's wrong. Israel's safety is one thing, our safety is another. Their interests are one set of things, one set of goals, but not necessarily our interests. Do we have an interest in destroying Iran? You know, during the war, Admiral Leahy, who was FDR's effectively chairman of the Joint Chiefs, he was a senior military advisor. He'd been CNO of the Navy. Very, very brilliant man. And very experienced. He brought in Arnold, who was chief of staff of the Air Force at the time, de facto under Marshall, and General Marshall was chief of staff of the Army. And he sat them down and he said, do you understand that when this war ends, we actually want to be friends with the Germans and the Japanese? And they both sat there with blank faces, and it was obvious to him they didn't understand. He said, this war is going to end. You are destroying everything in these countries. This is a catastrophe. Well, Leahy was thinking into the future. Is it really in the interest of the United States and our allies to flatten Germany, to turn it into rubble? And of course, you always have people that are eager to hate in the plural and internalize hatred and say, oh, yeah, let's get those people. They're terrible.
Gosh, that's why it's our responsibility to kind of try to figure it out, man. You know what I mean?
They deserve it. Really? You know, we destroyed both countries for all intents and purposes, and then we spent 50 years paying for it. It was called the Cold War because we turned half the world over to communism. Now, we're apparently on the road to destroying Iran, and make no mistake about it. We have the capacity to destroy Iran. Now, if this doesn't come faster enough, or we begin to back away from it, what does Mr. Netanyahu do? And I think that's a question that we need to answer, because he is not clearly under the authority of the President of the United States. He is, in other words, the President is the Commander-in-Chief of NATO. If NATO goes to war, they look to us, our C4ISR, our command structures and everything, and the President to make final decisions. The British and the French would never launch a nuclear weapon without consulting with us. Is that the case with Mr. Netanyahu, who leads a country
I don't think so.
to admit that it has any nuclear weapons? And I would argue no. So while we may be partnered, this relationship is not an easy one, and we should not delude ourselves into believing that under the worst case scenario,
I like this old man,
or they think that their country is being finished off. And quite frankly, right now, even though we're not seeing a lot of footage from Israel, Israel is being subjected to pulverization. The large missiles, the Khorram Shar 2 that landed on top of Haifa and destroyed the refinery, the oil infrastructure. I'm sure the docks have taken a beating. I mean, that's a very important port for Israel. And if we were going to bring troops into the region, we would probably have to come through that port. Right now, it's in bad shape. It may get worse. So is this going to go on and on and on? I think right now, there's no end in sight, because there's really no strategy other than we're going to bomb you into submission. And a war with no strategy tends to be a war effectively without end. And then if you pour oil onto the fire and say, either you surrender unconditionally or we destroy you, what does the enemy do? What is the incentive for him to surrender to someone who is demanding effectively the submission of his country, his people, to a state like Israel that hates them? And they're well aware of that.
Why would the U.S. government ever yoke itself in a war to a country with different aims?
Dude, that old man made a lot of sense.
It's not an attack on Israel, but any country that had a different goal. Why would you ever be a co-equal partner with that country?
Well, we concluded in the aftermath of World War I that the Bank of England and the British Empire had enormous influence over us, had misinformed us, misled us.
Yes.
With the, unfortunately, with the assistance of President Wilson, and of course, the man who was his, quote, chief of staff and national security advisor was not even an American citizen. He was a British subject. His name was Colonel House. And that led to conclusions after the war that this should never happen again. One of the reasons there was so much opposition to going to war in Europe again was because of the experience during World War I. We took terrible casualties. That's another story. Awful. Worse, frankly, in a shorter period of time than World War II. And I think what we have now is a similar situation. We have large numbers of people who are dual citizens. And we have large
Should never be dual citizenship in our government. Never.
Pick whatever name you want. They have spent enormous quantities of money over many years to reach the condition that exists today, a condition under which Israel's demands, and you have to link Israel to the larger financial picture because these billionaires control more than just a fraction of finance. They control the financial system in our country, have a huge impact on it globally, certainly in the West, and they have interests in expanding that power and influence. Israel is a way to do that. And the Israelis, of course, they see themselves in a position of either we expand or eventually we die.
That's
because we don't have enough people. Our birth rate isn't high enough. So we have to annihilate the people that are close to us in our country and eventually on our borders and expand. That means you march into
That's why they were talking about fucking Iran's borders moving and shit. Like the landscape over there
All you
changing.
do is look at the map. I mean, from their standpoint, this is a rational calculus. I just don't think it's attainable by them. And that's why we're involved. Because the only way to attain these goals and objectives is with the enormous power and influence of the United States. And we have committed ourselves, heart and soul, to this project. It's as simple as that. All you had to do was listen to the State of the Union speech by President Trump. And the one time everybody stood up, left and right, Democrats, Republicans, was when he talked about depriving Iran permanently of any nuclear weapon. And everybody stood up and applauded. And I will not allow that. I will prevent that. Well, first of all, there's no evidence that they've got a nuclear weapon. We haven't had any evidence for that for a long time. So is that really what this is about?
No.
I don't think so. I think it's about more than that. It's also about the missile arsenal that they want to eradicate. In other words, Iran has to live in a state of permanent vulnerability to Israeli attack and destruction. Otherwise, Israel is not safe. Now, many of these corrupt Arab states have accepted that bargain. And they are, in the view of many of the people that live in the region, in Arab countries, as members of the Arab version of the Epstein class. And they're hated. So when you go to the Emirates, for instance, there are plenty of people living in these countries who privately are very happy to see these people removed from power, these family dictatorships, which are hopelessly corrupt. They're sick of it. So we're involved in much more than just Iran. This has global implications for power and influence. And it's no accident that you have Mr. Witkoff and Mr. Kushner as the principal diplomats. And in Russia, the Russians have sort of looked at this and say, okay, fine, we understand you want your son-in-law and you want your friend to negotiate and they want to enrich themselves in the process. Fine, we'll help them do that. But please, can't you find your way to an agreement with us? Can't we hammer out something concrete that serves our interests as well as yours? And of course, the answer to that thus far has been no. And I think you're dealing with the same people vis-a-vis Iran.
We pray that the war with Iran ends immediately, but the truth is it doesn't seem to be ending immediately. Why would the United States ever allow its own citizens to be killed in order to expand the Israeli empire?
Well, it's not an empire, let's face it. It's a relatively small country the size of New Jersey. So I guess if you live in Jersey, that's an empire. I've got some friends who were in the army with me and they were Italian and it was an empire. But that's another story. I think Americans don't completely grasp what's happening. And they have been force-fed for decades a narrative that is designed to depict the Iranian state and its people as the sworn enemies of mankind and most of all of us. Of course, people that have been there, spent any time there, especially over the last 20 years, have come back and said, look, Iran today bears very little resemblance to Iran of 47 years ago. Iran has changed a great deal. In fact, I think you can make a good case that had we not bombed anybody and stayed out of this, that within the next 6 months to 8 months, the Islamic government would be gone. Because I think the country itself sees it not as this Islamic state at all. It sees it as a Persian state with a Persian history and culture. Many, many people in that country view Islam itself as an unwanted import from the Arab world. Now, there are plenty of people who are very religious. There's no question about it. Most of them live in the rural areas. Very few of them live in the large urban areas. And here's another interesting insight. I received this lengthy note from someone in the region who explained that when we bombed and the Israelis bombed Tehran, they killed large numbers of people in these, what they called middle class, upper class neighborhoods, who are actually very much in agreement with us that the Islamic government should go away.
Yeah.
I think if left alone, it'll go that way, one way or the other. But Iran is a nation state. They're not prepared to sacrifice their sovereignty, put their citizenry at permanent risk, essentially to live under the control of what they see as the Epstein class and on a plantation run by the Epstein class. And that's the way they look at it. And we don't see it that way because we're not thinking in those terms. All we can do is go back to 1982, talk about these Marines in that barracks that were killed, but nobody knows the whole story behind that business. And I stumbled on this because Cap Weinberger, the former Secretary of Defense, his office called, asked me to fly to Washington. He wanted to talk to me about this book I'd written called Breaking the Phalanx, which he liked. And so I said, sure. I flew back there and I ended up spending, instead of the expected hour, I was there for almost 2.5. It was a wonderful meeting. And one of the things that came up was Beirut, because one of the arguments I was making is that if we followed this plan, went to a very small but potent presence in Kuwait and just kept that there, we might avoid any future war in the Middle East. He said, of course, absolutely. No question about it. Makes perfect sense. Well, what happened in Beirut? And he said, that's an interesting story. I was sitting in my office watching television, and suddenly it was announced that President Reagan had approved the commitment of U.S. Marines in and around Beirut as part of some sort of peacekeeping operation to separate the PLA or the PLO from the Israelis and so forth. And he said, no one called me. He said, Ronald Reagan didn't call me, didn't say anything. So I picked up the phone and I called the office and I said, can I see the president? And the secretary said, of course, Mr. Weinberger, come over. I'm sure he'd be delighted to see you. He and Reagan got along very well. So he showed up and he walked in the office and he said, sit down, Cap, what's going on? He said, well, you just announced this. What are you doing? And he said, well, George Shultz was here. He spent a couple of hours and he convinced me that we had a moral obligation to participate in this peacekeeping force, multinational, that's going to bring peace to Lebanon and Beirut and keep the Israelis and the PLO part. And he said, sir, that you're not going to get that in that part of the world. All we're going to be are targets. This is a waste of time. It's worse than that. It's dangerous. Can't you rescind the order? He said, well, Cap, I made a public speech. I committed myself and my administration to this. How would I look if I suddenly, within a few hours, announced that, no, I've reconsidered it. We're not going to participate in what this is being billed as a moral mission. So he said, all right. He said, well, I'm sorry, Cap. I should have called you, but, George was here and so forth. Well, George Shultz, as a Secretary of State, was considered on the very liberal side, and Cap Weinberger was.
Yeah, it's funny, me and you think a lot alike.
Fast forward several months.
A lot alike. That's what I thought Epstein was, too.
And it's the Secretary Reagan. He says, the president wants to see you immediately. So
I mean, how does one school teacher have all these fucking connections all over the world?
This time, when he gets to the White House, he walks to the door opens, and Ronald Reagan is standing right in front of him. And he walks in and he grabs Weinberger's hand. He said, Cap, you were right. I was wrong. Now we need to get our men out of there immediately.
Yes.
And the rest is history. He did. Now, there were lots of statements about, we'll track down whoever did this and everything else. But he understood we were blown up because we were there. Most of the people that we lost in Iraq, and I would argue Afghanistan, have been killed because we were there. And the real question is, why were we there? And I've never been satisfied with the explanations. Because if you wanted to remove somebody from power in a place like Iraq, that's a fairly straightforward operation. You don't have to kill a lot of people, and the army will help you. You know, look what was demonstrated in Venezuela. I mean, I think that was a bad decision, but nevertheless, what did we demonstrate? That we could pay everybody off, and we could shut everything down, go in, and bring out the president and his wife. Fine. Well, those kinds of things can be done in certain countries under certain circumstances. I don't think it was a good thing. I wouldn't have done it, but that's water under the bridge. Now you're dealing with a civilizational state. Persia represents much, much more than people in the United States realize. They owe some of their culture and language to Sanskrit and Indian civilization, which is another civilizational state. Russia is a civilizational state. China is a civilizational state. These are foundation stones in the edifice of humanity and world civilization. Now you want to destroy Persia, which has been around for 2,700 years. Well, good luck. I don't see it happening. I don't think, if it even gets close, that the Russians and the Chinese are going to sit there and do nothing.
That's my fear.
How do we get out?
I think you have to find an intermediary, first of all, someone who is not part of the problem. My personal preference, if I were advising the president, is to call Prime Minister Modi in India. Now you can say, well, he was just in Israel. Well, that's fine. He has good relations with Israel. That's not a bad thing. He also has good relations with Iran. He's never been an enemy of the Iranian people. Neither are the Shiite Iranians his enemy. He knows that. And he has reasonable relations with the Chinese. They have their differences up in the mountains, in the Himalayas, the Hindu Kush, and that is a legacy of British colonialism. But my point is that he's historically leading a neutral state, and a neutral state that is growing in stature, in power, in influence and importance. We should recognize that and welcome it, not treat it as a problem. And I think if President Trump talked to him and said, look, we need to end this. And somebody will say,
I wonder if Trump listens to any of these broadcasts.
We're going to hit $300 per barrel of oil. We're going to watch 60 to 80% of the stock value crash. People are going to lose trillions in wealth. It will be a disaster. And it's not something we'll recover from. We've already seen that the Israelis hit a refinery on the outskirts of Tehran. And what did Iran do? They destroyed the refinery and its supporting infrastructure in Haifa. How does this help us? How does this help anybody? The damage that's being done is going to be semi-permanent. And by that, I mean it's going to be years to recover from this. The Qatari government has said we're shutting down. We can't store anymore. We can't drill anymore. We can't refine anymore. I mean, this is a catastrophe. We look at this and say, well, only 3% of our oil comes from the Gulf. Well, I got news for you. 50% of it goes to India. 50% goes to China. 70+% goes to Japan.
So prices are still going to rise either way.
Or so 65% goes to South Korea. Now, did we call the president or the prime minister of Japan? Did we call the president of Korea and say, by the way, we're considering a war against Iran, action against the Iranians? And we want to know what you think the impact will be on your country because you are friends of ours. You are our allies. Did we do that? I don't think so. I think we are acting like the biggest bully in the schoolyard. To hell with everybody else. This is what I want. And I'm going to pound your face into the dust. I mean, we've all seen those people. They exist. I grew up with some of them, had the crap kicked out of me once or twice at recess.
And Trump is one of them type of people.
Well, you can't do that in international relations for very long before people gang up against you. We already have this thing called BRICS, and we seem to be determined to destroy that because we see BRICS
as a threat.
Right now it has, 10 members, something like that, and there are 50, 60 standing in line ready to join. We don't like it. because they're looking at potentially gold-backed currency. What a novel idea. And if it's not gold, it'll be gold plus, maybe platinum, silver, who knows, other precious metals. And we're saying, well, this is a threat to us. It's a threat to our petrodollar. Tucker, we're killing the petrodollar right now in the Gulf. This is going to end this very lucrative cycle where people, we buy oil, they take the dollars that they get from us and they reinvest it in our country in a place called the bond market. Not anymore. And that's one of the engines that drives our economy. We've thrown all caution to the wind. Think of any number of worst case scenarios, and they are on the horizon. President Trump is still president of the United States, not president of Israel. And he has to think about the consequences here at home for us, for the average man, not for the billionaire class, the Epstein class, for the rest of us. I don't see that we're thinking this through. And I don't just blame him, because he's had wholehearted support from everybody on the Hill. Don't believe any of those Democrats, from Chuck Schumer to Slotkin, any number of them. Oh, I was always against it. Really? Well, you sure as hell aren't on record, and things are getting very bad. Eventually, I think members of his own party will desert him if he doesn't find an off-ramp. So back to your question, step number one, find a mediator, somebody that they will listen to, because no one is going to listen to us. If you're an Iranian, would you pay any attention to what we say? How many times have they been attacked in the midst of negotiations now? Twice. Why would the Russians pay any attention to us? This is a catastrophe. And if we do nothing, eventually we will wake up and discover there are some aircraft in the airspace over Iran. They're probably Russian. And they probably will put up something similar to AWACS. And if that shows up, then the message is stop. And the question is, what do you do? You know, we used to have this thing in the Ranger course. It's 3 o'clock in the morning. It's below zero outside. You're in the mountains and snow up to your rear end. And somebody walks in and says, you're now the patrol commander. You're now the platoon leader. Where are you on the map? What are you going to do now, Ranger? I mean, that's kind of where Donald Trump is headed. What's he going to do then?
I mean, clearly the wise course at this point, since it doesn't appear to be a way to open the straits using the U.S. military, is to try and decelerate to find that mediator. But the hitch, or one of them, is Israel. I mean, if Iran remains intact with a functioning government that is a direct descendant of the previous government that we tried to overthrow, we wound up killing the wife and the child of the current Ayatollah, apparently. That government will acquire nuclear weapons. Why wouldn't they? And will dedicate itself even more resolutely to the destruction of Israel. So if you're, I think, why wouldn't they? And they've said they will. So if you're Israel, you cannot allow that. You can't have a ceasefire and leave this government intact. And that leaves you no recourse but weapons of mass destruction, does it?
Well, it could. There's also the other possibility, and that is that, as the Pakistani government has said, they will provide a nuclear weapon to the Iranians. Now, the Pakistanis have always had a very close relationship with the Turks. And that's one of the reasons that Erdogan, who's the ultimate fence sitter, never quite aligns with anybody. And it's worked well for him, by the way.
Yes, smart.
I don't think he can do that much longer. Has always said, we're not afraid of you, because the Pakistanis have made it clear they will have a nuclear weapon if they need it. In fact, the exact conversation was held back under the Obama administration. And I think it was the Deputy Secretary of State who was there. And he said, what do you do if Iran gets a nuclear weapon? And he asked the Chief of Staff of the Turkish Armed Forces. And he said,
Good night, Blue Eyes. Sleep well, sweetheart.
Because Pakistan has said they'll provide us with a nuclear weapon if that happens.
Yes.
This is your logic.
Saudi Arabia as well.
Yeah, and your logic playing out exactly what you described. So you really want to stop this train now that's headed down the side of a mountain and doesn't seem to have any brakes. So you've got to go to someone who can stand in there. Now you've got to tell this man, what are you prepared to do? You know, are you prepared to cease fire immediately? which is not difficult to do because we're talking about air and naval forces. If you had 800,000 men under arms on the ground in a massive army, that stopping everything is very difficult. But air and naval forces can immediately disengage, pull back.
Yep.
That can be done. Are you willing to do that? And if you are willing to do that, what should I ask the Iranians to do? The first step is to get this fighting to stop because of exactly what we're discussing. It's going to run out of control. And I have worried from the beginning because I have people in Israel that I cared about very much, some friends, and they're all angry with me because I'm not unconditionally supporting what they're doing. And I told them from the beginning, I don't think this will work, and I do not think this is in the interest of the Israeli state. And I have said, if this goes to the inevitable conclusion, Israel may not survive this. And I think the hatred, the hostility that is growing in the region, not just against us, but especially against Israel, is just earth-shattering.
Yes,
It's beyond
I agree with
anything
that.
anybody has ever seen. It needs to stop now. I hear all these people worrying about anti-Semitism. Well, if you're worried about that, then stop doing what's going on. That's the quickest and easiest way to try and bring this under control. No, their thinking is, if we kill everybody who doesn't like us, we'll be fine.
Yeah, that attitude doesn't have a good track record. That's self-defeating. I would say, and I agree. with that.
There's one other thing I'd like to mention real quick, and this was a conversation, believe it or not, that Churchill allegedly had with Stalin, and through an interpreter. I have to understand, Churchill knew Stalin was a criminal and a murderer, no doubt about it, and he certainly did not see him as morally superior to Hitler. In fact, he probably thought he was worse, and Stalin knew that. And he used to sort of jab at him because FDR was Stalin's poodle. Anything Stalin did was good, and Stalin was morally superior to the British Empire. Anyhow, Stalin said to Churchill, "You know what the difference between me and Hitler is?" And Churchill said, "No." He said, "I know when to stop."
Yeah.
He was right.
He was right.
Hitler never figured that out, and he vanished. Stalin survived.
Yep. Until he went too far domestically and his own guys killed him. But yeah, no, I mean, he lived another 8 years.
Yeah.
May I ask, what do you think the likelihood of the U.S. committing ground troops is?
I think it's zero. I don't even know why they maintain the pretense. First of all, the Army today is a shadow of what it was 30 years ago. And I hear all this, well, I rebuilt the military during my first term. Come on. That's just silly.
Hey, Blue Eyes, anytime you ever want to come up and discuss anything, you're more than welcome to.
It took us 10 years to build an army. It probably takes 20 plus years to build a Navy because building ships and submarines is time consuming, resource consuming, very expensive. It takes a long time to train people. One of the reasons that Yamamoto attacked Pearl Harbor, he said, was if we're going to fight the Americans, we have to kill all the officers in the United States Navy. So we need to kill them in the harbor in Pearl Harbor. If we can kill them, it'll take the United States years to recover from the loss of all those trained officers. He was right. Didn't work, thank God. But I don't think people understand. Civilians have no idea what it takes to build effective military power. And the second thing is a draft. Privately, I would like to have a selective draft because I think average young man, not woman, but the average American male, who if he's got an IQ of 100 or above and is physically fit, should spend a couple of years in the military. I think it's a healthy thing. But that's not widely accepted in our country. We don't like it. The British never liked it. So the idea of this being something good is impossible to convince people to support. And if you go back, you lived through the Vietnam period, at least some of it. And as soon as Nixon ended the draft, suddenly all the demonstrations against the war went away. Now, there were some very sincere people who were against the war for all the right reasons. My point is the vast majority just didn't want to go.
Yeah.
What's it going to be like now? Why are we going to Iran? Where is this place? How long is it going to take us to get there? And then we have to look at what's happened in eastern Ukraine. Warfare has changed. It's changed dramatically. We have persistent surveillance above. We can see everything everywhere all the time. We can target everything everywhere all the time. So where are you going to concentrate 200,000 or 300,000 men? How many ports are you going to get into? How soon are you going to be taken under effective ballistic missile attack? And we already know that however much money you spend on air and missile defense, it's not going to be good enough to deal with modern hypersonic missiles. Can't be done. So it's an accident and a disaster waiting to happen. We're not prepared for that. And the nation psychologically is not prepared for it because no one has sold anything to them. We haven't had any fireside chats from Donald Trump saying, I just want to spend a few minutes and explain to you why I'm doing what I'm doing. Have you ever heard that? No. So why would anybody go?
Do you think it's possible, since you're describing a cul-de-sac, Box Canyon here, once again, do you think it's possible that nuclear weapons are used?
If a nuclear weapon is used, it will be by Netanyahu and his government, not us.
Yes, good.
I met and talked with President Trump. I like President Trump personally, and you can say what you want, Netanyahu.
Good.
I just don't. I hope I'm not wrong, but I just don't see that happening. I also see little evidence that people at the top of the military establishment collectively would sign on for that. You might get a few. Unfortunately, most of them are airmen or in the Navy, but I don't think they would be very supportive. I think they'd say, is this really the right place, time, and reason?
Yes.
Because increasingly we view nuclear weapons as something that protects your territorial integrity. Everybody knows that if you try to invade the United States from Canada or Mexico, yeah, we'll nuke you. No question about it, right? But why would we do that with Iran? But Israel is different, as we've discussed. And the more desperate they become, if Iran does not submit, and I see no evidence that they will submit, the more likely that option could be embraced and employed. And that's why we started this, because you asked specifically about who has the authority. I hope President Trump does, but I don't think so. I think Mr. Netanyahu is going to do whatever Mr. Netanyahu wants to do.
I mean, because we're implicated in that, and because the million-odd Americans who live in the region and the energy interests there, and just like the fate of the world, are all part of this calculation, why wouldn't we bring him to heel and prevent that?
How do you do that? How do you do that? I mean, you're going to have all the people that put you into the White House, that spent billions on your campaigns, who gave you the power, and the Congress that is essentially being purchased by the lobby, not by the lobby directly, but by the Zionist billionaires that pour money into the process to get people elected. You know how that works. What are they going to do? Are any of them going to sober up and go to Trump and say, look, this has gone too far? I don't see any evidence for that.
Before this started, we are now learning, and I think these are accurate reports, that members of the uniformed military understood, advisors to the president understood, that this was not, the things we were promising we would achieve were not actually achievable, and that this was a very unwise course. They knew that. But apparently none of them threatened to resign if the president went forward. What do you think of that?
Well, we have to understand something about the people in uniform. And I don't think we've ever had anybody that resigned in protest. The only one that I can think of who made his views on Vietnam heard was General Decker. He only served 2 years as chief of staff of the Army because McNamara went to Kennedy and said, he doesn't support our policy in Southeast Asia. He won't put any troops in. So Kennedy said, get rid of him. So he simply retired at the end of the first 2 years of his service as chief of staff. But we say in theory that, and this is something that goes back to Frederick the Great of Prussia, any officer whose conscience will not permit him to execute an order always has the right to refuse that order and resign his commission without prejudice.
Yes.
The problem is we don't let people go like that. If General Kane were to go in and say, this is it, can't do this, I'm tendering my resignation, he loses his retirement benefits and his pension.
And that's bullshit.
So if you're in the military and you do that, you lose your, whether you're a sergeant or whomever you are, the law says if you resign in protest over something, you don't get to keep your pension and you don't get to keep your benefits. So it's really not true. Now, when you move to the civilian side, the cabinet members, what's to stop them? Nothing. And that's where the resignations should take place. But that's the last place I would expect to see any. Even though you and I know a couple of them and consider them friends, I don't see any evidence for that. And the theory is, interestingly enough, if I do this, I poison the waters against me for the rest of my life. If you're in the military, I'll never get a job after, I leave. No one will hire me in the defense establishment. No one will hire me anywhere. And the civilian says, well, I won't get any cushy jobs, no bank boards, no industrial, concerns. Nobody will have me around. It's a terrible thing, because the ones who really have the flexibility to simply stand up and say, thank you very much, here's my resignation, I'm handing it to you right now, as of this moment, I resign as X. And you could walk out of the Oval Office and that's just fine. Instead, what will happen, if we're going to project into the future, is if we don't change course, we're going to escalate. We're going to double down. In other words, well, if the last 2,000 bombs and 800 missiles didn't do it, we'll drop 500,000 bombs and 200 more missiles. You understand? That's where we're headed. Double down, escalate, escalate, escalate. And then at some point, it's going to dawn on everybody, this has gone too far. This is dangerous.
But by then, it's too
The
late.
Russians make it clear they won't tolerate, or the Chinese, or both, or because they suddenly look in the United States and people have said, wait a minute, I can't put gas into my car. I don't have a job anymore. I mean, you just go down the list, economic catastrophe will visit us. Then all the heroic figures in the cabinet will say, oh, I resign. I never saw a more empty place than the West Wing of the White House and the Executive Office Building right after the election in 2020. That's what you'd see. Everybody just says, oh, I'm out of here.
Do you think, you're describing a system that doesn't serve the country it governs, and that moreover has been revealed as useless, in fact,
What's up,
counterproductive.
Kimberly?
Like, everyone knows this isn't working now. You can't lie about it anymore. So does that mean we get a new system? Are there, after this war, however it's resolved, however it ends, do you think that there will be structural changes to the country?
I think we have to anticipate something like that happening, because government, federal government, is a big part of our lives. I listen to people all the time say, well, I want a smaller government. Well, check your mailbox. What are you getting in the mail? What's coming into your bank account? How much of it is government? How much of it is federal? People don't realize that what is the percentage of gross domestic product now for the government? Somewhere in the 30+%. Back in 1900, it was what, 2%? You go back before the Civil War, less than 1%. The government was there, but it wasn't a big feature of the economy and involved in our lives. General Sherman, and everybody's heard of Sherman and his Civil War service. He became commander of the United States Army. In those days, we have a staff system, so he just was designated commander-in-chief, U.S. Army. And he was so frustrated with the corruption in Washington that without telling Grant, who was then president, he packed everybody in the War Department up and he went to St. Louis. He said, I'm getting out of Washington. And when Grant found out, he said, oh my God. And he said, why did you do this? And he said, this is a cesspool. It is full of corruption. I hate those people. And finally, Grant persuaded his old friend, you got to come back to Washington. And eventually he did. So this is not an entirely new problem.
No.
But in those days, the government was not what it is today. It's very intrusive. It's a source of wealth. everybody that is sitting in the various cabinet departments over there, a lot of them have their eyes on money. What comes down the pike? What sort of new generous program, grant, or opportunity is presented? And they're involved. They're part of this process. A friend of mine said the other day, he said these people are parasitic. They're like crustaceans, or remora on the body of a shark. I said, well, that's pretty rough. But, as I said, this is a huge problem. And the American people, when things go very badly for us in the financial system.
Yeah, me either, Kimberly.
They're going to want answers, and it's not going to be pretty. And this, unfortunately, what we're doing right now is put us on an accelerated path into disaster, I think.
Yeah. I mean, it was so obviously going to happen. It was just couldn't be clearer that there was no compelling national security related reason to do this, that the aims, even to the extent they were articulated, were going to be hard to achieve, if not impossible, and that we were dragged into this by a foreign government, which is what happened. That was all so obvious that you have to kind of think maybe destroying or weakening the United States was the point.
I don't think so, but now you're up against a different problem. There are a lot of people in Washington that do not understand what Stalin talked about, limits. They don't understand the limits of power. They don't understand the financial limits of expense. They don't appreciate debt. Remember, this is the new economy. Debt no longer matters. I mean, I don't know how many times I've had people tell me that for the last 10 years. After World War II, when Eisenhower was president, what does he do? He shrinks the defense budget. He cuts back on the size of the Army. He invests in nuclear weapons. He sees this as a relatively inexpensive way to maintain deterrence. Tries to keep the Navy and the Air Force within bounds, which is why everybody in the services at the time he was president hated him. Now, why? Well, he understood that investment in military power, there's no salvage value to what you produce.
Right.
In other words, it's the sunken cost is enormous. He also understood something else. He didn't want to be involved in wars. Why not? Why would the man that was at the top of the military establishment in Europe not want to be involved in a war? Well, in January of 1945, he had sent a letter to Marshall and said, oh my God, this bulge is terrible. The Germans have done something we didn't think they could do. I need more men. And Marshall wrote back, you're not getting any more. You've got all the forces that you're going to get. You better get out there and win the war. So Eisenhower learned there were limits to what we could produce.
That's right.
Limits to how much we could invest. And we were not Stalin. We could not pave the road to Berlin with millions and millions and millions and millions of dead troops, dead soldiers, and destroyed lives and civilians. So he kept us out. Now, then you get Jack Kennedy, and later on you get LBJ and Nixon, and these three people were at a very low level during the Second World War, and they were in the Pacific. And they saw these vast fleets on the ocean and aircraft in the sky, and they said, we're the greatest country in the world. My God, no one can do what we can do. Our power is limitless. And Eisenhower always said, that's a mirage. Our power is limited, always.
Yes.
And we have to operate within limits. I don't see anyone with a sense of that in Washington. No one, not in the White House, not anywhere.
Yeah, it's called hubris, and it's the death of men and empires. Colonel Douglas Macgregor, thank you for that wise summation of everything that's happening.
Thank you, Tucker. God bless.
God bless. Thank you.
All right, chat. I'm finna wind it down for tonight. I appreciate y'all hanging out with me. I hope that was kind of enlightening. It was to me anyway. Man seemed like he was awfully smart. I wish somebody would take his advice for sure. Hey, remember one thing. At least we are in America. Y'all have a good night, and we'll see you later.